Chicago. And then we met in Montreal at a combined meeting of the World Confederation of Physical Therapy, the Canadian Physiotherapy Association, and the APTA. We inaugurated the orthopedic section with myself as first president. The biggest challenge, I think, is going to be artificial intelligence. I am concerned that if we are not hands-on and don't have hands-on skills, we could lose much of what we know today to a robot. Fed by all of you with the best information on research in musculoskeletal care and treatment, and with a monitor on your wrist, that robot will be tracking you 24/7 and inspiring you to keep doing your routines and activities. And if you are only a therapist who gives advice and works in the gym with patients on equipment, I think that robot will do a better job. And that's a fair of mine. We must focus on our patient management skills, our eye contact, our handshake, the way we deal one-on-one with humans, because the more high-tech we get as a society, the more we're going to need that human touch. And that's why manual and manipulative therapy, which is part of all of us here, must be exploited to its fullest for the betterment and the preservation of our profession.
But I identified 3 areas that I think that we really should be prepared for, or at least plan for. The first of which is the work shortage that is occurring in the medical profession. For instance, rheumatology and family medicine. They're having difficulty filling their class sizes in medical schools now. Well, much of the things that they can do from a diagnostic perspective, and especially in MSK, is exactly what physical therapists do. We now have direct access. We know how to diagnose in our area of expertise. We can refer, as was evident starting way back with the military, for lab work and for diagnostic imaging. And we should take advantage of the fact that there is a work shortage and their associations are looking for help. So let's start dialoguing with those other associations to make sure that they know who we are, what our expertise is, what our scope of practice is, because oftentimes they have no idea about that. The second area is similar to what Stanley talked about, which is artificial intelligence. And there's the narrow AI, which is the robotic, which focuses on one task. Then there's the AGI, which does have a learning capacity and should be as smart as human beings, but it doesn't have emotion, it cannot develop rapport with patients, and it doesn't have as an empathetic communication skill. Now, ASI, the super intelligent, supposedly is the up and coming. That, on the other hand, can learn from its own mistakes and will have the idea of emotion. And then the third area is reimbursement. We all know that that reimbursement bucket is only so big. Everyone is vying for a piece of that pie. We've been excellent advocates for reimbursement through the APTA, and we need to continue to do that. So let's look at our challenges, not with fear, but with opportunity, with vision, with a strong approach for the future, and embody and embold our profession on behalf of physical therapy and the patients that we treat.
Last numbers I saw on APTA.org in terms of how many licensed PTs are in the U.S. were quoted 250,000. As a market share, the association we capture about 25%. With the pandemic, those numbers have been decreasing slightly over the last few years. I think maybe they started to stabilize a little bit. Maybe I can speak to that a little bit. But annually, we graduate between 9 and 10,000 licensed PTs, DPT grads. We lose, and the majority of them are members while they're in the DPT program. But we lose 50% the first year after graduation, and another 50% after that subsequently. So how can we grab out of those people and hold those people so they can help transform society? course, looking at the picture vision. So again, relevancy and having impact, showing value, I think is a huge challenge. But just briefly looking more from a profession standpoint, besides payment and access to our services, I think having a specialty track, a specialty pathway for our generalist is key to our future. You know, we have pathways for our specialty areas of practice. So we think about our generalists, our primary care PTs. You know, when I think about it, it is much easier being a specialist or a subspecialist because the challenge for us is to learn more and more about less and less as we continue to specialize. Think about a generalist or a primary care PTs. They're being tasked to learn more and more about more and more. And there's no formal pathway in terms of residency and fellowships and having an examination to highlight who's attained that level of knowledge. And with things that are happening in the DoD and the VA and are great examples of the area of primary care. If we don't develop that area of specialty, 10 other groups will, and then we'll be splintered off, out in the periphery, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's better than what we have right now, but having a focused, central way to work towards specialization for that group, I think is really critical.
Going back to mainly, I was a clinician, not a researcher, not an educator, but I was a clinician. And one of the things I learned when I was at Washington University in St. Louis was from a gentleman who was a wonderful professor named Steve Rose. And Steve Rose, I used to come in with new ideas, and I'd come in there and talk to Steve, and Steve would say, hey, that's fine and good, Mike, but where's your evidence? Where's your evidence? And that really led me to this constant search for evidence. And I do publish, and I was one of these people that had a master's group that actually did publish, and people like, your master's in your publishing? And I said, yeah, because again, mostly because of Steve Rose and actually Jules Rothstein, who was also my mentor there when I was at WashU. And when I was at WashU, there was two people, along with Dick Earhart, who was my clinical mentor, so I had these wonderful mentors. And that's one thing, having a wonderful mentors like that is really what helped me grow. And then throughout that, what was so important is having that evidence. And to me, for the future, we have to have the evidence. And again, one thing that when I was president that I started, but that actually was all serendipitous, was the CPG program. And I was very lucky to have this guy next to me, Jay Ergang and Joe Godges, over there right on the right side, or on the left side, my right side. And I had these two people, and the night before I met with Tommy Coyle, who was my vice president. I said, there's something I want to do about it. Research, the triangle, the research, education, and practice. What can we do to put those three things together? Because all those three things are really the foundation of what we do as a physical therapist. And we worked, we came, we thought we worked, and we were in New Orleans, and we got together as a group. I said, we're going to do this extra meeting on Sunday, make you stay a little longer. We're going to put our heads together. And we worked, and we talked, and we mulled stuff over, and Joe, or I forgot Jay, came up, hey, let's do this. And, and all of a sudden, we're starting to think, hey, that's great. It can show us help us the direction of clinical research. And what right now, I've actually, this is my sixth CPG I'm working on, the HIP OA on my third revision. And one thing I've learned, and as I go through and mull through all the literature that we need, that shows how, the importance of our practice and really the need for our practice is the holes. And again, so what's interesting is that the CPGs not only provide information and education on practice, but they also show the holes of research, where we need the new research, where we need to keep going in the future. And that's really what I'm getting at, is that the future is what we need to fill in those blanks, to make sure that we have that research to back up with what we do. Because again, as I work with some of these young kids and I read on Facebook, that I should look at some of the things inside and some of the just absurd treatments for, that chiropractors do, that even physical therapists do, that have no evidence. And to me, that's where we're going to lose out. If we don't have the evidence, we're not going to have a future.
So I just kind of want to follow on what Mike was talking about. The section has been a leadership through its grants program and generating evidence to support orthopedic physical therapy practice, and has been a leader in CPG development. In fact, I remember a meeting in San Diego where we were told we won't be able to do that by APTA staff, but we did it, we pursued. And so, we've got, 25 or so now CPGs. And the problem that I see right now is that while they're out there and people are familiar with them, and they say they are implementing the guidelines, they're really not implementing the guidelines. And part of the problem is that the reimbursement is not aligned with the best available evidence. So we need to work hard to truly get to the point where we are getting reimbursed for value-based, not volume-based service. And I'm not proud of what I'm going to tell you right now, but I am going to illustrate a problem. At the University of Pittsburgh, our DPT students do a capstone project. And this year I was dismayed to have the students report that on 80% of their visits for shoulder pain and low back pain, patients receive a hot pack and electrical stimulation. That's, believe me, we did not teach them that in our program. But what they are doing is they are modeling what the clinicians are doing to maximize the reimbursement. So until we straighten out, what we get reimbursed for, we're not going to be able to achieve our goal of value-based physical therapy practice.
I take a little bit more simplistic approach, maybe because I'm a clinician and an educator and everything else. But I kind of look at, we very much struggled with the cheers philosophy, right, where everybody knows our name. And that's really the problem when it comes down to it. How do we know that? We know that through evidence, we know that through reimbursement. So until that becomes a value situation, it's going to be a challenge. And I think that's our next challenge. And some of that we've had some really good things with, because we've now expanded the economic value study to BP. Thankfully, that's a huge thing. I think it's been very helpful. And that in the future will be even more beneficial to us. But I think we really need to work on things that, I put it this way, promote and identify PT with a cost savings, not as a commodity or a cost containment. Too many times we're looked at as expense. And really what we should need to be looking at, to use Gerard Brennan's term, is looking at the downstream costs of our benefits to society. And I think that that's really the next step that we can maybe make a difference with some of this payment issue. I think we need to, I would like to see us embrace more of a curriculum for psychologically informed physical therapist practice. This goes to what Stanley was saying about AI and the interference that might have. But again, I think that we talk about that, but we really provide the education in that domain that will be beneficial. And this goes back to what Bill was saying about the generalist. I'm trying to keep the 3 minutes here, Bob, but you're giving me a hard time here. And then I think that there's an elephant in the room we need to talk about, and that is this, that we have a problem with identity, but we have a problem with identity within our own house. When are we going to draw the line in the sand between the physical therapist and the physical therapist assistant in terms of their roles and responsibilities? Because that's a problem we have right now. There's a difference between collaboration and coordination. And I'm not saying this from a negative perspective, I'm saying it from a positive one. Let's define what it is, come together with consensus, and get on with it. And stop arguing and spending resources that are really diluting our energy moving forward as a profession that is collaborative. I'll get off that. We're moving on to RC 1722, feasibility of expanding prescriptive authority within physical therapists and scope of practice. Well, we're touting that we are the answer to the opioid crisis through non-prescriptive medication, and on the other hand, we're looking at giving prescriptive medications. I'm not saying that's wrong, I'm just saying that we need to be careful about, again, our resource spending in terms of our sustainability. Do we want to spend resources on something that's going to be hard to fight? I'm not saying we shouldn't have to fight, but I'm saying we ought to be careful to look at that. Maybe APTA panel will have something to say about that. I really think we've made big strides in imaging. I think we should continue in that direction, and maybe lab tests. But again, this goes back to real practice, doesn't it? Is there anybody in this room that's ever been collaborating with a physician and they've been denied getting lab tests for a patient they wanted, or an image? Anybody here? Not very often, right? I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. So I think that collaboration should be looked at. In terms of innovation, Stanley, I want to make just one more point, and that is that I think we should embrace innovation through AI, but we have to look at it carefully, because really I think the issue, I think Drew makes this concept of augmented intelligence versus replacement. Is that still in line for you? But I think that's the way to look at it, is how can we augment practice with AI to better serve our patients the way we want to serve them? And I think we can look at different roles and responsibilities and look at how we look at our scope of practice and how we view care. So there's a million things I'd love to talk about, but I've already used my 3 minutes up. So.
I'm probably going to shift gears a little bit because I agree with what everybody said, but I'm going to focus on our association, our organization. And I think we need to really look at, as everybody knows, on the governance guide, we really need to look at our structure and our terms of service and positions and leadership coaching and development. So, is that better? So how are we going to continue to have leaders in the profession? And we have to start speaking to the modern therapists, because they're not me. They're not me stepping up to the plate and running for office. So how do we give them the tools so this organization is sustainable to achieve what everybody just said up here? So I think as an organization, we really need to look at that and look at our governance and say, hey, can some positions be 2 years? Can some be 3? How do we ascend people through leadership? How do directors get to vice president to president? How do we sustain that over time so we can be more effective as an organization with leadership? So I think it's really important that APTA and each academy start really looking at consistent, constant leadership development and leadership coaching to help our new PTs, our early career people get in the path, give them the tools they need